basically, because there's so much weight on here with the clay, I don't really even worry about pushing down first, which I would with other pieces. So I just push in, and then to really center it, I use this hand as a claw, and I actually, that's the only way I found to get enough oomph to be able to try and center it. And then I go down, and I don't go straight down. The clay won't let me do that. It won't go into the center if I try and go straight down. So, and I don't know if I have allergies, but ever since I started clay work, maybe I'm allergic to clay. But I do, when I do this, I do feel like when I sit, if I bent forward, my nose would be right in the middle of the piece. And I think that helps. It helps that that's where my body weight is, right over top of the piece. If you sit way back, then your hands and your arms have to do everything in your back. So I just sit up and
When we were
can't have that. Okay. So then I just take a tool and see, and it's not quite centered. You can see how it's wobbling a little bit. So I really want to get it nicely centered. So I'm going to take my tool. So then I'm going to, when I put the hole in it, I'm going to slow her down just a little. I'm going to put the hole in it, and when I put the hole in it, I do not go straight down, which could be part of the cracking issue.
okay.
What I do is I start here, and I do like an inverted little thing, so that if there's, and I do this on large bowls too, and I know it's a bit of a waste of clay, but if there's any air or anything that's going to not make it go right in the center, it's an easier way to get into the center for the clay. It allows me to do that.
So your fingers just essentially cut that off, just through pressure.
I go down and in, and it comes up. Yeah. So I've got probably, I want about an inch of clay, so I've got 7/8.
So what do you want? You said you want?
I want an inch of clay on the bottom of a, I don't know what size, this is probably going to be probably about 16 inches. Then what I do is, with my hands, this hand is doing almost all of the pulling, my right hand, because I'm very right-handed. But my left hand, I've learned to put my fingertips on my left hand right where my cuticles are. Kind of gives me a pull. So I pull this open straight back until I can get the heel of my hand in here. So then I put some water in here, and you want to really push hard. It's one of the few times. Do you open like this, Donald?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is just my way of doing it. This is not certainly how everybody should do it. And if everybody lived their life the way I live mine, whoa. But I think what you want to do is, I've tried to make it so that it's easy on my body, it's easy on my neck, it's easy on my back, and I try and use my forearms and my hands more than anything else. So I put water in the middle, get it going, kind of medium slow. And when you first start, I'm going to put my hand down in here, and I'm going to push here with the heel of my hand. And when I push, I'm going to push down and out. Once you start it going, it doesn't like to go out at first. And my outside hand is just simply keeping it on center. So I'm pushing down and out. And just like when you bring up a tall form, you push really hard usually to get the form started up. The higher you go, less and less and less and less pressure. With this, when you start pushing, you push really hard. And as you go out, you use less and less and less pressure. Because what you're doing is you're asking the clay to widen on the base of the bat. Okay, so I'm going to start here, push down and out. Any questions? questions? Take it out.
Left-handed.
I'm right-handed. And this is one of the few times that I do not brace my elbow on my right hand. One of the very few times.
Is that towards like 10 o'clock-ish? I'm looking backwards.
Yeah, it is. And basically, I sometimes, you know, when I throw, I think of my arms and my hands as mechanical tools. Like when I center a small piece and I open it up, what I do with my thumb is I use it in a very unorganic way. I take my thumb and I bring it here like this. I open it like that. And that's not a natural hand movement, I don't think. Except that, and now I think of my arm being like a mechanical arm and just pushing straight out. Okay, so now I've got it like this. Then Donald, I'm coming in, and because you have had several cracks, in the bottom of your platters. What I'm doing is, as you see, I'm not just getting it even on the bottom and compressing. I'm really pushing like pulls back in. See how I don't want those in the bottom of my platter at the end.
Right.
But that's the way to get the when it's a wide piece, to get it to go in and really get the clay to move. If I were to start here and very just mildly push on it, it would be more even, but the clay down deep wouldn't be moving. Bottom and compressing, I'm really pushing like pulls back in. See how I don't want those in the bottom of my platter at the end.
Right.
But that's the way to get the when it's a wide piece, to get it to go in and really get the clay to move. If I were to start here and very just mildly push on it, it would be more even, but the clay down deep wouldn't be moving. And I think I would be moving only the, say, top quarter inch of the clay rather than the whole thing. So that could be it. If you're starting with like a whole inch here, maybe it's just not getting to the very bottom of the clay. So I usually do this 5 times. And a bit soft, which I much prefer soft clay.
Do you ever throw in recycled clay?
I love recycled clay if it sits for like 2 years.
Oh.
But if it doesn't sit
A
for,
little newer than that.
if you, well, you can pour vinegar, beer, or urine in it, and that will help age it.
Urine.
Urine? Yeah, well.
That's a nice-
I mean, I don't
picture
make
for my
platters
club
this
now.
big, but my platters I do with new recycle.
Well, I'm recycling clay here, which we're going to be.
They don't crack.
They don't crack. Recycled clay, I think, is
Don't worry,
wonderful.
I'll list them out.
And at home, when I recycle, which isn't that often, unfortunately, I mix all my clay bodies, which Dennis cringes when I say that. I mix red and white.
I do it too.
Really?
You have to.
And you end up with this clay body that's really kind of cool. But here we're only doing white clay, and I'm going to be recycling, after our show, I'm going to be recycling, I've started, and I like to recycle it so that it's pretty mushy, actually, and then let it sit for at least 3 weeks. But I'll pour some vinegar in there. I promise, it will be vinegar.
I never thought about it, but yeah, my stuff at home, I recycle and I use it pretty.
It's great.
Quickly
I love
for
recycled
pattern.
clay.
I don't do
And
it.
that's a good thing that you're doing. Very good thing.
Why do you let it sit for 3 weeks?
To age, basically when you take clay and you might have tail end scraps of trimmings, and then you've got the clay from the splash pan, so you've got wet, you've got different moisture content, and if you take it and like try and reuse it right away, it's not as plastic. It has a lot more, it's a lot more forgiving, because the water, the clay is microscopic platelets, and the water is able to even out in all that. Even if you de-air it and everything, it still is just a little bit, I mean, I got real thrilled one time, and I had a whole bunch of recycled clay. I don't know if you were in the class, and I brought it to class, and I'm like, this is the best clay. I aged it for like a year and a half, and you can do anything with this clay. And I brought it in, and my students were like, I don't see any difference. And for me, it was like it could almost make the pot all by itself. It was just like wonderful clay, and they were like, yeah, it's all right.
Well, they just didn't, they were not aficionados.
Well, I think it was just like I could see the difference in that I had been making plates and bowls and things all day, and I was just like, oh, this is great, it's magical clay. And not only that, I was using recycled clay, which Dennis was always like, rah, rah. Okay, so now I'm going to make a rim, and I like rims, and Pumpkin, I don't think you were here when we were talking about rims and how they rise when they dry. So this is big enough I don't have to use my glasses. So I'm going to start down the bottom. This is so much easier now that I don't have a splash pan. I really like wide rims, thicker rims, because they end up not chipping. If I were to leave it like this, where it's kind of squared off at the top, smooth it up a little bit, but still kind of squared off, it would just be so much more fragile when something is placed on top of it. And I have to say, I'm not very good about when I trudge things around.
This is your bottom.
How deep is my bottom? Me here?
How much clay is still left?
Oh, that's a good question, Christy. Almost an inch. So almost as much as what I started with, which is pretty amazing considering, that's quite a bit. So I can get a nice foot on this.
Okay, so you were going to trim most of it off.
I'm going to trim it, so and that way I can glaze underneath it too, which is really nice because then it makes it a more finished piece. I made a platter not long ago and I was in a rush, and it's just cut off from the bottom and it's not really trimmed or anything. Okay, so I'm gonna, so it's about an inch. But I'm gonna just make like a regular rim on this, and then maybe on the next one I will do a little bit, I'll concentrate on the rim a little bit more. So this is it. I'm going to, could you hand me that bigger trimming tool over there?
So if you leave this the way it is now, and it dries, it's going to be close to a right angle, or is that too much?
Like this, it's going to dry, and it's going to be like this. So it's going to be like a basin.
Sorry.
Basin, yeah. So this tool is fabulous for getting under here. Before I do what's called laying down the rim, I do all my trimming underneath, because basically by the time you put the rim down, you just don't want to mess with it anymore. Oops. It's warm in here. Whoops. Got a big glob. I have learned that if you don't take the big globs off and you try and just continue to trim it, you'll end up with a nice gouge. There we go. So this really helps on a platter to get it trimmed in. And you can do that with any kind of wood tool. And so the last thing I'm going to do is lay the rim down. Now, there are two rules of thought. One is to cut it off before, and I usually do it after, so that's what I'll do on this. I'm going to put a little mark here. That's going to kind of define my rim. Food cannot come past here. That's it. Food must stay within. And then I'm just going to put the rim down.
You stamped that on the bottom?
Yeah. Food safe to not food safe past
Beyond the line. Don't cross the line.
I've been firing this wonderful young woman's pots that she leaves the clay body. It's lovely clay body. She leaves a lot of it exposed on the outside, and it's just so pretty. So to lay down the rim, I put a guard hand underneath. My hand goes underneath here, and it's really not doing anything other than the same thing with bringing it out. It makes sure that it's not going to fall. is doing two things. It's cleaning up the rim. Bringing the rim down.
And you stopped at the line you just put on, right?
Good, very important. Rib will not go beyond there. So that's basically it. I don't do anything else. I'm gonna clean it up a tiny bit. I'm really kind of a bit of a fanatic, I guess, about cleaning it up, because the more I clean up now, the less I have to do later. So then what you do, and you see how that comes down a bit, but by the time it finishes, it's gonna be as much up, maybe even more. So then take it off, and then I'm gonna I've been cutting my plates and platters off like this for years now, because if you try and cut plates and platters off on the wheel, the tendency is to come up, and I just got tired of it. Didn't matter how thick I made those plates, you know, it's just a real pain to trim something that's uneven. So this is a wonderful wire, and I used to use used to go to Home Depot and get a special little thing for PVC pipe. So that's it, and it